So finally back with another video on the Rob O'Reilly guitar. In a previous video I did on this MIDI Pro 3, I had a look at the XY pad and also the Fingerpads. For this video I'm going to talk about tunings and connectivity. So when it comes to tunings, I'm going to talk about the tunings that you can do and save to the guitar, but also stuff like connecting to retuning software using the controllers on the actual guitar to control certain parameters affecting the way that the output is tuned. It will be tunings, retunings, microtunings, and all that good stuff. I'm also going to talk about connectivity and in what ways we can control other software and hardware as well, going out via USB and also the MIDI 5-pin DIN system, using something like this, a MIDI master, to connect to an Eagan matrix, and you don't have to be connected to a computer. I'm going to show you some of the solutions that I would use if I want to go wireless instead of being connected via cable. Before we go into the tunings chapter, I really want to make this distinction between the actual physical tuning of the guitar and the MIDI output. So the first thing you need to do is to learn to disassociate a certain pitch with a certain place on the neck. These are completely reassignable to your liking, and I'll show you what I mean in this video. But this has bearing on those of you who are interested in alternate tunings, because you really don't want to retune an instrument like this, the physical side of the instrument, to get an alternate output. If you're interested in switching between different alternate tunings, you can save those as presets to the guitar and you'll have easy access switching between these. But you shouldn't really go to retuning the physical guitar, because that will affect the string tension and you'll need to recalibrate, and that's not a thing that you would do live probably. Now, having said that, let's head on over to the fantastic possibilities of retuning the MIDI output. Let's get into this by starting with the bassline setup. So this is the obvious starting place. Every note sounds like what you would expect coming from that place on the neck. The pitches are assigned to those particular places that you're used to having them. But what if I limit the amount of pitches available and also spread them out to only the white keys or the places for the C major scale on the neck? So for some of you, this will break your brain trying to get your head around. Others like me see places, not notes. And for any of these places, I can input or assign notes or chords. In the end, it all comes down to where in this process and what means you're using to manipulate the MIDI. So let's start with the possibilities of changing the outgoing MIDI from the actual guitar. So in the MIDI Pro editor, I can go in and change the starting note of whatever a string is assigned to. Let's say I go in on the high E string, the E4, and raise that to an F4 instead. I will still have the string's 24 slots defined by its frets to, in succession, give me the following notes from F4 and upwards instead of the E4 and upwards. So there's a limitation, of course, to how much I can do with this, but it's not impossible to be kind of creative with also the possibility of just retuning strings. I mean, if I take my low E string to start on E1, if I take the A string to start on F1 and the following strings to chromatically go up one semitone at a time, I will get a completely new fretboard layout to work with. Probably inspire me to work in a completely new way that I haven't thought about. So, I mean, this is for you to experiment with, and that would be my absolute recommendation. And then, of course, you have the multinotes, which are either chords or intervals, are also assigned on a per string basis. So you can choose, for instance, to only have the low E string play power chords while the rest of the strings are playing single notes. Or you can go for something more spectacular, like a mix of different intervals assigned to different string spreads. For this last patch, I didn't change anything about this open string tunings, but I changed everything about which notes and intervals you're playing. So the two things that I can do in terms of tuning with the MIDI Pro 3 is either to change the open string tuning to whatever I want to. I can set it up or down octaves or semitones, or I can assign any of these multinotes to be played by a particular string. But I obviously can't do these assignments per note. I can't use one isolated slot on a particular string to assign a certain functionality like a multinote or a pitch change of sorts. So these are per string, not per note. Now, if we go to other ways of retuning our MIDI, we can start with the first example that I showed you. That's a plugin in Ableton that I'm using, Scalar White, and I just assigned two dials on the MIDI Pro 3 to control the 12 notes of an octave on the one hand and a bank of scales that this plugin comes with. It allows for you to pick a subset of all the 12 notes that goes into the traditional octave. And it would apply these notes only to the white keys on the piano, which is the same as any C major shapes you have on your guitar neck. So all the hard work that you've done with the arpeggios in the C major position and pentatonics in the C major position, if you want to, will now pay off. Now you can focus on just playing these shapes that you know so well, but the sounds are completely different. And you have complete access to changing these scales on the fly with these buttons on the guitar. And if that wasn't adventurous enough for you, here's another example where I'm using the same dial, but with another piece of software. This time it's Infinitone DMT, and I'm using the dial for a morphing function between two chords. So I just decide on the extremes, the chord on the left side and the chord on the right side of this morph. But using the dial on the guitar and stopping somewhere in between, not at the extreme ends, I can get some sort of variation of these chords harmonies that I couldn't sort of foresee or presuppose. And this is a fantastic opportunity to expand your harmonic mind also to groups of pitches that you weren't sort of prepared for. But of course, you don't need to challenge yourselves to be able to use a software like this. If you want to use the microtonal dynamic aspect to move the frets around to microtonally, perhaps close in on something like an exotic tuning. With this software, you can go in and pinpoint how the virtual fret distribution is to be set up. In the last example, I showed you Infinitone and this morphing. Going forward, I will show you Wilsonic, which is a free resource for dynamic retuning. Not all software can make use of this MTS-ESP technology with a master telling its instruments what tuning it should be, but something like Modot's Piano Tech absolutely can, and I'm using the nylon string here. Here I'm just changing the Piano Tech internal tuning from equal temperament to accepting the outside messages from this MTS-ESP protocol. And then there's just a matter of choosing the appropriate tuning or temperament. So obviously these are but a few of the infinite variations or takes on tunings that you have with something like a Rob O'Reilly guitar because of it being a MIDI controller. The software side itself is so flexible and lends itself to be manipulated or molded in exactly the way you want. It's more or less up to you on how to use it, what preferences or projects you have and what they call for in terms of special tunings, for instance. But how to get there is more a question for the connectivity part of this video. So let's start with a look at the basics. We have a USB out, we have this 5-pin DIN MIDI, and we also have the classic audio jack. The audio jack is in fact stereo, so you can use both the magnetic out and the piezo out at the same time if you like. The scope of this video doesn't allow for me to go into the audio part at this point. You do have this 5-way switch on your guitar, and these are the magnetic pickup configurations that you have. But when it comes to the MIDI out, when do you want to use the USB and when do you want to use this 5-pin DIN out? This guitar has its own battery pack in it, so it charges while you use the USB. So anytime that I'm not away from my studio environment, I actually use the cable. And I also have this underlying feeling that the cabled version is a bit faster when it comes to the MIDI messages. It's a completely standalone controller if you want to use it that way. If I'm going to use it that way, I'm going to use the 5-pin DIN out and probably the MIDI master here, because it's this small and it's also powered by the batteries in the guitar. So this together with the guitar makes it into a wireless unit with the limitations that Bluetooth has. If I'm interested in a more long-range solution for wirelessness, I would use this. This is the MIDI Beam, and you see how you can connect that to the guitar. And you'll put this at the other end, connect that to the synth or the computer or whatever. And that is a way better solution in terms of reach. I think I can use this up to a few hundred meters at least. This is a really good solution if you want to go wireless. A lot of synths today are built around the idea that you're able to provide a lot of real-time control over many parameters simultaneously. So when I got this, which is the Eagan Matrix Micro, it's a standalone synth with all the sonic capabilities of the Osmos or of the Hawken Continuum that I can actually wear on my guitar strap together with a power bank, sending audio wirelessly to whatever receives it. What I'll do is I'll put this into the guitar. This is a transmitter, and here's a receiver, and I'll use that for the Eagan Matrix. Let's say you want to use your iPad instead with some crazy swarm soprano sax on it. The connection part is even easier. You can set it up so that the iPad recognizes and connects the MIDI master as soon as it's connected to the guitar. There are two ways to configure and save presets with this guitar. One is to work with the guitar itself. You just click a button and a menu appears in this little LCD display that you have on the top of your guitar. And you can just click your way through that, making the settings and saving it down also with a click of a button on the guitar. The other way is to use the MIDI Pro editor, and that's a software on your computer. So I can use this MIDI editor to configure and save patches to my guitar. As soon as I connected the guitar with the USB cable to the computer, I have full control over the parameters on the guitar also from this editor point of view. So you can look behind me and you can see how I'm changing colors, for instance, on the XY pad like this. And I can change anything from pick mode, tap mode, XY pad, finger pads, string bends and stuff. You have the MIDI arm settings and you also have the control settings. And these are the controls A to D, and these represent the dials and the buttons on the guitar. Anything that I save here, I can send to any of the patches on the guitar. So preset 4 in this case, and save that. So if you want to use the computer interface for creating and saving your presets and patches, that's another reason for using the USB cable. In the last video that I did about this guitar, I talked about the XY pad and the finger pads, and I asked you guys if there were any questions. You're welcome to post them in the comments. And I think I've answered most of them, but there's one that perhaps needs some more explanation, and I'll go into that. What I really like to see in an instrument like this is for the finger pads to be some kind of surface like the Rolly Seaboard or the Hawken Continuum. What's really missing is being able to fade sound in from nothing and have full control over the volume of the notes throughout their duration. Regular aftertouch is just not enough. Fair point. I also had these questions around how well these finger pads could be used as controllers for that specific purpose. With regard to this volume control in the finger pads, I have this example with the Swan Cello. It's only duophonic, so it might not meet the criteria that way, but you'll clearly hear the coming in from nothing and having full control over the volume at least. So if the question about the surface is more about pitch rather than amplitude control, I surely would understand the question, and I wouldn't oppose to have something like a little strip of a Hawken Continuum on a guitar. I can see how that is another dimension of control for a guitar like this, but it's not necessarily something that I would be asking for at this point. I already have so much control with this guitar. It's overwhelming and it's borderline ridiculous. So hopefully I'll be able to do another video, and I'd be most happy to try and answer any of your questions just as before. So post as much as you can in the comment section and I'll try to answer you directly, or I'll bring it along into the next video. This is too much fun to not try to stretch out. So I'll see you in the next video. Bye.